Hello everyone. In this video, we'll walk through how to connect Redis Cloud to your consumer VPC using AWS PrivateLink. AWS PrivateLink lets you securely access Redis Cloud without exposing your VPC private subnet. Traffic to and from your VPC and Redis Cloud stays on the AWS network, completely isolated from the public internet. Instead of connecting entire networks, PrivateLink exposes Redis Cloud through a unidirectional private endpoint inside your VPC. To follow along, make sure you have the following prerequisites: a Redis Cloud Pro database, an AWS VPC with a security group that allows ingress traffic to ports used by your databases. Redis Cloud will provision databases on ports ranging from 10,000 to 19,999. You can also allow traffic on port 8070 for metrics. You'll also need subnets in the same region as your Redis Cloud database and settings to allow for DNS resolution and DNS host names. And finally, you'll also need permissions to create and manage VPC endpoints or service networks in AWS. In addition to these prerequisites, make sure you review the current limitations to using AWS PrivateLink. The link to these will be in the description. Let's start in the Redis Cloud console. Go to Subscriptions, select your subscription, and open Connectivity, then PrivateLink. In the Resource Share section, click Manage Principals. Here, you'll add the AWS principal that will consume this service. This could be an AWS account, an organization or organizational unit, an IAM role, or another supported principal type. Then enter the principal ID. Optionally, add an alias, then click Share. The first resource share may take a few minutes. Once shared, go back to the AWS console and search for Resource Access Manager. Here, under Shared with Me, click on Resource Shares, then click on the invitation and accept the resource share. When it's accepted, you'll see the principal marked as accepted in Redis Cloud. Next, we'll add the actual connection. Still in Connectivity, PrivateLink, expand the Add Connection section. Here, you choose whether you want to connect using a VPC resource endpoint or a VPC lattice service network. In this video, we'll focus on the VPC resource endpoint. In the AWS console, create a new VPC endpoint. Set the type to resources. Select the resource configuration ID that matches the one shown in Redis Cloud. Choose your VPC. Enable private DNS and select verified domains only. Select the appropriate subnets. Attach the security group that allows access to the required ports. Then click Create Endpoint. Once the endpoint is created, AWS automatically generates private DNS entries. You can find them in the Associations tab of your VPC endpoint. There will be one DNS entry for each Redis database and one for the metrics endpoint. You can now use the private DNS entry and port to connect your application to Redis. To demonstrate this, I will SSH into a Bastion host and use SSH agent forwarding to connect to an EC2 instance in the private subnet. Once connected to the private instance, I will use the Redis CLI to connect to Redis Cloud with the private DNS entry. I'll bring up my terminal here, add my key pair for the EC2 instance, then SSH into the Bastion host. Now I'll use SSH agent forwarding to connect to the instance in the private subnet. Then I'll make sure we have Redis CLI installed. Now we can connect to the Redis Cloud database using the private endpoint. Let's go back to the Redis Cloud console. Click on the Database tab and click on Connect. We'll choose the private endpoint and click Copy. You can confirm the private endpoint connection URL is the same as the private DNS entry of your VPC endpoint. Back in the terminal, we'll paste in the Redis CLI command with the connection URL the same as the private DNS entry. And we're connected. Congratulations! You have successfully connected Redis Cloud to your VPC using AWS PrivateLink. Keep in mind that you can also use the metrics private DNS entry to connect services like Prometheus and Grafana. If you ever need to disconnect, go back to Connectivity, PrivateLink. In the Connections section, click Disassociate next to the connection you want to remove. You can then safely delete the VPC endpoint or service network.